sport union with yachtswoman Tracy Edwards. And Israeli football fans were banned from a Europa League clash with Aston Villa. But now the Dutch authorities, who flagged them as high risk, are contradicting the evidence. Also, a pastor's Bible verse lands him in legal trouble. John 3:16, love, faith and eternal life. But police say it could be hate speech. And we've got comedians answering some crazy culture conundrums from our live studio audience. But first, the news with Bethany Elsie.
Good evening. Your top stories from the GB newsroom at 7 o'clock. The US Secretary of State says good progress has been made during peace talks with Ukrainian delegates. Marco Rubio described the meeting in Geneva as the best they've had since coming into office in January. Delegates from Ukraine, the US and European countries met to discuss a draft plan to end the war between Russia and Ukraine, after Kyiv and its allies expressed concerns over what they say saw as major concerns to Vladimir Putin. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's grateful to the US and President Donald Trump for his efforts in trying to help. Zelensky also thanked Europe, the G7 and the G20 for their support.
I think this is a very, very meaningful, I would say probably best meeting and day we've had so far in this entire process, going back to when we first came into office in January. But there's still some work left to do, and that's what our teams are going to be doing right now. And we'd like to come back to you maybe a little later tonight with a further update.
A senior Conservative minister says the Chancellor's position has become untenable amid chaotic announcements ahead of the budget next week. Last week, Rachel Reeves scrapped plans to raise income tax rates, but she's widely expected to raise other taxes in an effort to bridge a multi-billion-pound gap in her spending plans. Writing in the Daily Mirror, she's pledged to grip the cost of living crisis. But Mel Stride told GB News the British public is running out of patience.
I think if we've reached the point where this government in opposition made a lot of very clear commitments, including in their manifesto, then promptly junked a lot of them and did different things in office, and has now arrived at a point where once again we are led to believe they will be putting up taxes on hard-working people, which is something that they've said they wouldn't do, then yeah, I think it's time for her to step aside, I'm afraid.
Rail fares in England will be frozen next year for the first time in 3 decades as part of government plans to move rail services back into public ownership. Ministers say the move will save millions of travellers hundreds of pounds when buying their season tickets and peak and off-peak returns. A woman who died in Wiltshire has been described by colleagues as an incredible and kind person. 55-year-old Sarah Forrester, who worked for a mental health charity, the Kelly Foundation, was found dead at her home in Swindon on Friday evening. A 13-year-old girl was arrested on suspicion of murder yesterday, but has since been released on bail. And a gold pocket watch recovered from a passenger who drowned during the sinking of the Titanic has been sold for £1.8 million. It's the highest amount ever paid for Titanic memorabilia at an auction. The 18-carat gold engraved watch belonged to the American businessman Isidore Straus, who died alongside his wife, Ida. You're up to date. I'll have more for you at 8 o'clock.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. This is a show where we cast our gaze across the spectrum of culture, current affairs and politics, doing our best to bring a bit of common sense to that which has become senseless. We have got a packed show, as always, so let's get straight into the madness. The UK's COVID inquiry is under fire after its latest report appeared to endorse faster, earlier lockdowns. Critics argue the 760-page document ignores the wider harms of restrictions, from economic damage to missed medical diagnoses, and instead claims that imposing lockdown a week sooner in March 2020 might have saved 23,000 lives. The report's conclusions have sparked renewed debate over whether nationwide lockdowns should ever be used again, with concerns that future governments may feel pressured to act earlier and harder despite the social and economic costs. I am now joined by the Director of the Academy of Ideas, Baroness Fox. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I think, first of all, a lot of people are suffering from COVID fatigue, but this report is important because it sort of lays out the framework by which we would respond again in the future. And it seems to be what this report is saying is just lockdown and lockdown quicker.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is Free Speech Nation, and I think sometimes free speech issues are about what's omitted from a discussion. So this was an inquiry into what happened in lockdown, and it didn't ask whether lockdowns work. I actually think that's a bit of an error. I mean, inevitably, we don't ask, well, do they work? Do a comparative study with what happened in other countries.
Like Sweden.
Sweden being the obvious one. But, you know, more draconian places like China. You know, what happened around lockdowns? So don't do that. And there is no attempt at going more into what is a broader cost of lockdown. I think a cost-benefit analysis would say that only looking at it through the prism of the virus, they didn't look at what the costs are of closing down the whole of society, stopping everybody having any kind of social existence, stopping people going to work, closing down schools, all of these things, they were costs. And actually, most of those things had no impact whatsoever on the spread of the virus, but they've had a huge impact on the economy, on people's psychological coping. I mean, look how many, I think there's hundreds of thousands of young people who now don't go to school because that contract was broken. They were told you don't have to go to school. You know, and all those decades, centuries telling kids going to school is really important. You can never miss school. And they say, well, I'm ill. You can't miss school. Then you suddenly say you can now miss school because somebody thinks that you might be the cause of somebody else getting ill. So it changes everything. And also people are now not in work, not in employment, not going into work. People are just saying, well, I don't want to go to work. A lot of people on the sick. These are consequences. We're about to have a budget on Wednesday. There is a huge, huge, huge economic cost that was made by closing down the economy, the cost of furlough, but also just stopping production. And so they're the kind of issues that you would have expected to have been discussed.
Sorry, I think someone's got COVID over there.
and what's interesting, what's interesting about that is we now laugh. If that had happened in the middle of COVID, then first of all, we wouldn't have been allowed to have people in the studio. Secondly, if somebody coughed or sneezed, everybody would be like looking over their shoulder and think, get them out, like they've got the, you know. And also, there would have been a kind of panic reaction. And one of the things I think that's very important for free speeches is to acknowledge that during that period, there was the shaping of the narrative. And this inquiry is meant to look at governance, and what they don't look at is the whole way that the nudge unit, tried to psychologically manipulate the public so that they would be in a state of fear, so that they would stay at home, brought in rules which they knew made no sense scientifically, and also there was explicit censorship. Anyone who argued or even asked questions on social media, you know, you'd either get that thing up saying COVID misinformation, or there was explicit censorship. Somebody like Matt Ridley, who was in the Lords at the time, he actually wrote and suggested and did a big investigation into the fact that possibly the virus started in Wuhan in China. He was attacked. His reputation ruined, well, not ruined at all because he's still got it, but they tried to besmirch his reputation, said it was misinformation, disinformation being put forward by the Russians. It was xenophobic because it was anti-Chinese. Guess what? It now appears that the virus started in a lab in Wuhan, and he was right. But the impact of the state actually actively working with social media companies to keep their eye on and monitor and use surveillance against what ordinary citizens locked at home were actually asking awkward questions and to demonise anyone. Well, we know this is a kind of playbook that anyone who's interested in free speech will be thinking, oh, that sounds familiar, and the state did it to us during that lockdown. Not a word in the inquiry.
Because the inquiry's cost about £200 million. It should be pointed out, this is Module 2 of 10, so they are going to explore other issues further on in terms of the impact on kids. But because this is about health, as you rightly point out, there are other factors that go into people's health, including the funding, for example, of the NHS. Now, if we're paying before 2020, I think it was about 40 billion on the interest, and now we're paying nearly 3 times that. Of course, that's less money for things like the NHS. So do you think that this report was a missed opportunity to actually widen the scope still within that health remit?
Totally, because, you know, think of what the headlines have been this week. The headlines have been that because Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings and the atmosphere was toxic at number 10, and that we didn't lock down a week early, 23,000 people unnecessarily died. That's what they say.
And this is a modelling that is
No, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, sorry.
Then we actually read the small print and you think, oh, that's based on modelling. The same modelling that actually said that if Sweden deployed voluntary kind of restrictions, there would be mass death. I mean, it was like scary. What the same modellers from Imperial College, that's the science. The other thing about health is, you know, COVID wasn't the only game in town. People carried on getting cancer. People carried on having heart problems. And we know that the NHS was completely shut off from people with other illnesses. The elderly, who we were supposed to be protecting, not only got COVID because the misgovernance ended up putting people with COVID into care homes, but then they were shut off, completely cruelly deprived of any contact with their family or friends. And obviously their health hugely deteriorated. People often died lonely, totally isolated, not seeing anyone they loved. And there was no scientific or medical proof that that would have caused any harm to the health of the nation. Let alone the children, just let me say. Yeah. Children, closing down of schools, terrible.
Absolutely. And look, I've only got you for a few more minutes, so I want to move to something just a little bit more light-hearted and fun. Let's talk about the assisted dying bill. So that's what's taking up your time in the House of Lords.
Totally, yeah.
Now, one of the Conservative MPs who supports the bill at PMQs this week basically said or implied that the House of Lords is kind of delaying it or trying to stop it. What would you say to that?
Just keep your eye on this bill. It's a private member's bill. It's come through to the Lords. Remember, I'm one of those baronesses who think that the Lords should be abolished, right? And it's an unelected chamber and so on. But whilst it's there and I'm there, the point of the Lords is to scrutinise legislation. This legislation is not fit for purpose. And the truth of the matter is there are huge gaps, very few safeguards, and all that the people in the Lords are trying to do is to fill in those gaps. That's the job that the Lords is there to do. And I do think, again, it relates to free speech. There's an attempt at demonising people in the Lords who are genuinely interested in saying we should at least ask questions about a fundamental bill that will change the nature of the relationship between state and its citizens. It can kill them. The NHS and doctors and their patients, they can kill them. And we should ask some questions, and we should at least have safeguards, because that's a massive change. And what they're trying to say is, oh, you're being unconstitutional, undemocratic. I will point out that some of the leading lights of the people who are supporting the bill who are saying, how dare the Lords stop this? Absolutely disgracefully anti-democratic, were themselves very enthusiastic at using the Lords to stop Brexit and a whole range of things that they happen to agree. So it's double standards. They're trying to demonise anyone who's just trying to do their job. And you don't have to agree with me on assisted dying. That's entirely up to you. But the idea that we should rush it through so that we can get a bill through that the Prime Minister, irresponsibly, in my view, told Esther Ranson, who's a celebrity, and said, oh, don't worry, we'll help get this bill through. Then it's, because it's private members, it's not a government bill, so then they say, well, it's got nothing to do with us. The truth of the matter is, it's up to the Lords to actually ensure that before we decide whether we should vote it through or not, and we will decide, we haven't decided yet, we table lots and lots of amendments and see how we get on, and then if they accepted all those amendments, then it might be that you say, OK, enough safeguards, I'll go with the will of the Commons that have voted it through, fair enough. So far, when we haven't discussed that many amendments, Lord Charlie Faulkner just says no, 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 and then goes on telly straight afterwards and says these people are wreckers, filibustering, anti-democratic. And you think, why don't you take one of the amendments, like I argue for amendments, why don't you actually stand up and argue against my amendment?
Like making it a limit to 25 instead of 18?
Yeah. Although I'm going to argue against that, even though people who, you know, so you whatever the amendments are, you should take the amendments content-wise and argue for them. This is basically a period of no debate, where the people who don't like what you're saying try and close down the debate. And as we know, this is Free Speech Nation. The more debate you have, the better. And you, members of the public who are watching, people in the audience, keep an eagle eye on what's happening in the Lords on this issue. Because if they try and close it down, then actually that's anti-democratic, anti-free speech, and actually could be quite a nihilistic outcome of the state having permission to take people's lives. And I don't think that's a good thing myself.
Indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, Baroness Claire Fox. As ever, let us know what you think. Send in your comments to gbnews.com/yoursay. Well, there is a brand new way to take part in the conversation by becoming a friend of GB News for free. Take a look.
Join the community and be part of our shows by becoming a friend of GB News. Get a direct line to join the conversations that you hear us talking about every day in our programmes by commenting on Your Say and voting in You Decide polls. Access opinion, analysis and behind-the-scenes videos as we share more from the stories that you see on TV and radio. Plus, watch our shows live and on catch-up anywhere, anytime. If you love our channel, become a friend of GB News for free by scanning the QR code or going to gbnews.com/friend. Don't just watch our programmes, come and be a part of them.
Still to come, we are going to be covering the new Puberty blocker trial. But next, on Free Speech Nation, we have the audience questions with our comedians. See you in 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to my comedians this evening are Nicholas DeSanto and Cresta Wetton. How are you guys, Cresta?
Very good, yeah, you?
Yeah, good, thanks for the bands.
Good to be back.
Good to be back, yeah.
It's too early for the bands, isn't it?
No, but you go straight into bans. What do you want to say,
okay.
Bans?
No, nothing.
Nothing, OK. Good bans, guys.
Glad to be invited.
Let's get our bans from our audience. Our first question is from Anton.
Have the British public had enough of the BBC?
Oh, my gosh, Anton, you're just coming in so strong there. Have the British public had enough of the BBC? The BBC lost over £1 billion last year as licence fee evasion and cancellation surged, with 3.6 million households now claiming they don't need a licence. Enforcement visits rose sharply but proved less effective, prompting MPs to warn that the BBC's funding model is no longer working. The crisis comes amid scrutiny over BBC buyers and growing political pressure to reform or replace the licence fee entirely. So, Cresta, you were saying how you don't pay your licence, you don't care, they visit you every day.
Just don't open the door, yeah. That's, I'm amazed that as many people do still pay it as do. If only, was it 3.6 million? Yeah, that leaves most people paying. Isn't that amazing? But I think that's going to plummet with all the bad press lately. And people, yeah, I do think people have largely had enough, increasingly.
That's £1 billion. That's that pays for the three of us.
Well, you started with Cressida. It puts me in an awkward position because now, to be impartial, I have to defend the BBC. And don't you know that the BBC have a lot of good responsibilities, even external new responsibilities, because it's not the funny part yet, all right? You know, Arabic is one of the 5 official languages of the UN, so they have to produce all documents in Arabic. But because of Donald Trump's funding cuts, now the United Nations Council of Human Rights said, hey, we cannot have a website in Arabic anymore. So please, to learn about our positions, refer to www.hamas.org. And then Hamas said, our infrastructure is down. We don't have a website anymore. Please refer to BBC Arabic for our latest positions. So all this means if we totally get rid of the BBC, who is going to do all that good work?
OK, yeah, fair enough. And really, we are duty-bound as the British people to pay for that.
Obviously,
so nice.
Yeah.
I
was being the devil's advocate, obviously.
Oh, no, I got it. Our next question is from Jeff.
Hi, Josh. Where can you watch a documentary about free speech if it gets cancelled?
Yeah, so where can you watch a documentary about free speech if it gets cancelled? This is a London cinema Rich Mix cancelled the screening of Think Before You Post, a documentary on free speech, citing misalignment with its values. The film, produced by Spike magazine, features cases of alleged censorship and police action against individuals for online posts. Creators condemned the ban as ironic, insisting the film's message on free speech remains crucial, and plan to reschedule the event. Well, there is something ironic here, isn't there, about a free speech documentary getting cancelled?
Well, it's just a sign of the crazy times you live in, isn't it?
Absolutely. But do you think that the venue has the right to cancel the documentary?
No,
not at all. Don't?
No.
OK. I think I'd have to differ with you there, only in that it's a private enterprise. They can show whichever films. Well, what do you think, Cresta? Do you think that they have the right to do it, but of course we then have the right to think, well, that's not where I want to spend my money?
Yes, that's all true. And if people are watching at home don't know Rich Mix, because why would you? It's in the hipstery part of London where man buns are compulsory and you have to have the right opinions to get in. And when I heard it was being...
They sell Pick-a-Mix.
I wouldn't know, I don't know. No, but when I heard it was at the Rich Mix, I thought, oh, my God, that's fantastic. We're making progress. It's going to be shown in East London where all the cool kids hang out, the ones that hate free speech. But, of course, my hopes were dashed and now they've cancelled it once they found out what it actually is, which is really disappointing, but also not surprising. So good luck to the people at Spike for getting it put somewhere else.
Yeah, I've seen the documentary. It's fantastic. There was also something else where, when it first went out, I think on X, it was also limited. You couldn't see it supposedly because of age restrictions, even though it doesn't actually say anything.
It was already available online, and that's as much as said by Spike as well. But I knew this is Free Speech Nation. Obviously, this was coming up, so I took the liberty of contacting Rich Mix venue myself to get their side of the story. I'm being very BBC-like impartial this week. So they said we are committed to free speech, but we are even more committed to irony. So that's their side reported.
Fair enough. Do you think that they have the right to cancel the documentary? Well, show it if they feel like it doesn't, because if they're saying it doesn't fit with our values, then obviously what they're literally saying is free speech isn't one of our values.
Exactly. I mean, I'm always surprised. I had a show, a comedy show with my friend Luke McDonald, cancelled last month in Birmingham, and they had the same explanation. They said this does not align with the values of our venue. I didn't know venues had values, you know. Right? I thought it was just a building for. But anyway. As a private enterprise, they are free to cancel as they have, but then, of course, they have to face the consequences, the inferences that we make, that, OK, if you have a problem with a documentary, a legal documentary about free speech, then what does that say about the values of your building?
Yeah, well, it's a real shame, because if anybody could do with watching this documentary is people in East London.
I love the idea that they would have bought tickets not really known and then just been shocked when they saw it.
This is about free speech.
It's really not that shocking. I've watched it. It's fantastic.
I'm gutted because it's just across from the bagel place. So anyway, our next question is from Ryan.
Hello all. Should academics be suspended for even discussing the N-word?
Yes, should academics be suspended for even discussing the N-word? A UK university suspended classics professor after he used the N-word during a staff meeting, citing potential risk to colleagues. The professor says he quoted the word from the Oxford English Dictionary to illustrate historical and contextual meanings, not to offend. The case tests the government's new campus free speech rules, highlighting tensions between academic freedom and sensitivity. So, Ryan, you were saying the N-word a lot before the show.
I wasn't, Mum, honest.
But do you think that, I mean, this is something going on here, because this is actually not in front of students at all, and this was used in defence of somebody else's free speech rights? I don't know if you heard about this story in that way.
I mean, just generally, it should be no word should be off limits, depending on context of how they're used.
Yes.
Because if you start saying, you know, certain words in the English language can't be used, where do you stop? Because there's going to be people that object to all manner of words, and then it's going to be a slippery slope of saying less and less and less and less. So I think we need to make a stand early.
I can tell you've been in the audience of Free Speech Nation before. But this is it, Krista, because it's all about... we're comics, we're always doing jokes, and then it's all about getting in trouble with the jokes. You're having to point out it's context. Now, in the context here, he was specifically using this word to illustrate the point of context. And
Absolutely.
then that's what's got him suspended.
Ryan's exactly right. I remember seeing Daniel Kitson once saying that language changes and something becomes problematic, and then we change it for something else, and then that becomes problematic. And he said if you put you effing in front of anything, it can be problematic. So what was said around this? Well, we know it was a conversation about free speech. I mean, it was in academia. I don't have a recording of what was said, but I highly doubt that any of the staff there were really made to feel unsafe. That's another word, isn't it? That's got a creeping definition. What do we mean by unsafe?
And that's why he's been suspended, by the way, is because it's for the safety of
the safety of everyone else. And it wasn't immediate. He didn't find out immediately that he'd offended somebody. Nobody spoke to him face to face. This went on in the background, and then he was kind of disciplined later. It's really pathetic, in my opinion.
Yeah. You're maybe the one person who I genuinely have to say, don't say the N-word.
You mean Nicholas DeSanto?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That is offensive.
But, again, context. And he was obviously very clear about using this word. I believe he was defending someone using the B word. I don't even know if I can say...
Yeah, I don't know. The B word was in the Telegraph, so probably we are safe
I don't know. You know, B-I-T, some other stuff.
So this is genuinely a funny story, yeah. So Manchester University...
No, don't say the university.
Oh...
No, I'm joking.
The U word.
But don't. Now we're going to have to say Manchester University.
Oh, yeah, the filthy...
Don't say his name.
No, I don't remember his name, but the first one, because one professor had used the biatch word, right? And some students were biatching about the biatch word, and he is suspended, so there's a disciplinary... Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, you know...
very well disguised.
For Ofcom purposes.
No one would understand what
So I'm playing along, right? So this professor for the B word is in trouble in the disciplinary session.
Gets in a linguist.
The linguist, he's a philologist.
I'm sorry for the B word.
Professor Portman says, guys, words change, context matters. For example, even the N-word is now in the dictionary, in the Oxford. Yeah. And wouldn't you know, it is probably suspended. So when does this stop?
Well,
next,
I think so.
Their union rep comes and says, I'm here to defend the guy who said B-word and the guy who said N-word. Oh, no, you are suspended too. It's impossible to deal with these people.
All of academia is going to be kicked out at the end. It's very troubling, yes. Right, our final question for the moment is from Roger.
Hello. Do you ask your baby's permission when changing the nappy?
Oh my God, this is. If you hadn't said it so creepily, Roger.
He redeemed the N-word guy.
Nickname for me. Do you ask your baby permission when changing a nappy? So, Australian researchers advise parents to seek the baby's consent during diaper changes to teach body autonomy from an early age. The approach involves narrating actions, observing reactions, and using correct anatomical terms, even though infants cannot verbally respond. Experts say this gentle, symbolic practice helps establish boundaries and awareness of consent for future child development. Roger, have you ever changed a nappy?
His.
You've changed right.
No, I haven't. I don't want to either.
You don't want to?
No.
Well, I've changed nappies for about 10 years now. Continuous change. I stopped about 2 years ago, finally. It was just one child. But the idea that you're meant to kind of talk to kids through it. Have you ever changed a nappy?
I haven't, no.
Yeah. It's
sounds great.
It's not a pleasant experience, it should be said. But this is this ironically the nanny state?
Good one.
I think what they're describing is just parenting, isn't it? Don't be horrible to a kid. Don't, do it appropriately.
Yeah.
And in terms of consent, I don't think nappy changes are really the biggest problem facing children in the West, are they, at the moment? I think other things have happened in terms of gender ideology.
Also, could you get off your TikTok for a second while I change your nappy? To your 1-year-old.
Yeah, I don't completely disagree. Change nappies nicely, of course, but you're not going to get consent from a 9-month-year-old.
You've got kids. I mean, I don't know about you, but I just swear at my kids like, oh my God, that's disgusting! What have you done to me?
Well, I have changed nappies, and I think this is proper. This research and the findings is proper new age poo-poo. I told my kids I would say poo-poo on TV tonight, and I have.
And you said it.
I have fulfilled that promise. So the idea is consent from an early age, but obviously it's exaggerated. And then again, if they have so much regard for kids' consent and body autonomy and all that, how about when transitioning them or when jabbing them with kind of dodgy vaccines? Can I say that on Free Speech Nation? So yeah, obviously you talk to your kids, you try to raise some awareness, but this is proper, out of
I think
that
maybe the solution is just to get them to change their own nappies. That's what I'm going to work on. Right, next on Free Speech Nation, hundreds of children, some just 10, are set to receive puberty blockers in an NHS-backed study. Researchers say it's safe and monitored, but critics warn of serious risks to fertility and development. See you in 2 minutes.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
The unsettled weather continues across the central Mediterranean. Heavy rain and thunderstorms expected here. Some areas could even see a month's worth of rainfall in just a few days. Mostly dry and settled across Madeira, but many areas of northern Europe are going to see a very unsettled day on Monday. The poorest of conditions likely across Italy and around the Adriatic coastline. Some heavy showers and thunderstorms here. Still a mix of sunshine and showers into next week, with the best of the temperatures across Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's a mixed picture out there. We have an area of low pressure moving south and eastward, so rain or showers for some of us, and it's still feeling chilly. So the area of low pressure is across the northwest, and it's going to gradually sink its way south and eastwards as we go through this evening and overnight. So any outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland will sink their way into Wales, northern England, eventually towards southwest Wales and southern England, accompanied by a strong, brisk northwesterly wind, so coastal gales possible in the south. Further north, holding on to a lot of cloud, but the wind direction now coming in for a northerly. But for most of us, it's a frost-free start to Monday morning, given a lot of cloud cover and showery outbreaks of rain. So there are going to be some showers focused again across eastern Scotland, where they could be falling as snow over the mountains. Drier towards the west with some sunny spells. Best of the sunshine really across Northern Ireland. Dry here to start Monday morning. But across England and Wales, well, it's a cloudy but chilly start to the morning, with the strongest winds still across the southwest and into the English Channel. So as we go through Monday morning and into the afternoon, most of the showers across the southeast will clear their way through. Best of the sunshine across Northern Ireland, into Scotland and eventually into parts of Wales and the southwest as the cloud breaks. Then the focus for the showers really confined to eastern areas, still falling as snow across eastern Scotland. It's going to be feeling chilly out there. We hold on to more of a northerly wind, but feeling more pleasant across Northern Ireland. That leads to a cold start to Tuesday morning, especially in the west, but we actually have a ridge of higher pressure. So for most on Tuesday, it's largely fine and settled. A few showers still running down the eastern coast. Now, as we go Wednesday into Thursday, it's actually turning milder and more unsettled after a cold start. That's all from me. Bye-bye.
Britain's economy is at a crossroads.
And this budget day, every decision counts.
From taxes and rent to the cost of living.
Whatever the outcome, the GB News family will be there.
With expert analysis breaking down what it means for you.
Budget day, all day Wednesday.
Only here on the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's economy is at a crossroads.
And this budget day, every decision counts.
From taxes and rent to the cost of living.
Whatever the outcome, the GB News family will be there.
With expert analysis breaking down what it means for you.
Budget day, all day Wednesday.
Only here on the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Now, hundreds of children, some as young as 10, are set to receive puberty blockers in an NHS-backed clinical study. The trial, led by King's College London, will test whether the drugs can safely support young people who identify as transgender. Critics warn of potential risks to fertility, bone density and brain development, while researchers insist the study is closely monitored and ethically approved, with parental consent required for all participants. I am now joined by the founder of Transgender Trend, Stephanie Davis-Arai. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks.
I think a lot of people were surprised with the announcement of the puberty blocker trial, because when the CAS review came out, it seemed quite clear that puberty blockers had potential serious side effects, and they were basically stopped by Wes Streeting. So there is something contradictory here, where they're saying puberty blockers are bad, essentially, but hey, let's do this bad thing to these kids.
It was the one part of the CAS review that stood out, really, as being different to the rest. But I think that we can't blame the CAS review for it. I think the CAS review has done an enormous amount of good, and people forget that her remit was actually quite narrow. She was looking at a service that's been provided by the NHS for children for 10 years. And it's estimated around 2,000 of those children went on to puberty blockers. The question is, why don't we do the follow-up study on those children? You know, my point of view is we've already done a puberty blocker study. The results were not good. 2/3 of those children had either no effect or worsened mental health. So we have those results already. We know that blocking a child's puberty in itself causes harm, and it has to. We don't really need another trial to tell us just how much harm it causes. So it is you know, it is shocking. It's not a surprise, though. It was supposed to start in January this year. It's actually late, which I think is because it must have taken all that time to get it passed through an ethical review. And I thought it wouldn't get through. There's no way a trial on children just starting puberty to stop a really critical period of growth would get through any ethical board, but it has.
Because you've been studying
this shock to me.
10 years, right? So your organisation, Transgender, just celebrated its 10-year birthday. But to the idea now that we're kind of almost, it seems like we're going back to the beginning. There is already evidence out there that puberty blockers have very serious effects for children.
And you know, for me, the most serious effect, and I think this is the reason why that they've given, why they actually they can't follow up those 2,000 children, is that most of them went on to cross-sex hormones. And so that confounds, you know, they didn't do the study at the time. And because the Tavistock was so captured, it was a faith, gender identity. And when you have a faith, you don't need evidence. In fact, evidence is offensive to you because you just believe. And that's how the Tavistock became. And so they didn't collect the data, they didn't do the research at the time. So I understand that the reason for this study is to study purely the effects on puberty blockers by themselves, the immediate effects and particularly on the brain and on bone health. Those are really important things to study. I don't think we should use live children to do it, though, and I think that's against all international ethical standards.
Do no harm.
To use live children to try to advance medicine. That's against all ethics. So I think it's, you know, horrific that it's going to happen, but I do think the other thing about the original study, and probably the most serious effect for me, and this has been replicated in every single study, that once a child is on blockers, they almost inevitably go on to cross-sex hormones, and then you're into surgery, and then you're a medical patient for life. So why does the NHS think it's a good idea to create another cohort of children who will be dependent on the NHS for the rest of their lives? And that's quite apart from, of course, the devastating effect on those children's lives. The study is also short-term. It's a 2-year study. 5 years will be the longest because of the various ways it's worked out. So we won't actually get the information that, or the data that we really need, which is the really long-term data. And that does include, you know, you go on to blockers, then it's cross-sex hormones, then it's surgery. What is the effect on people's lives? We know from Kira Bell how devastating it is. And how many more Kira Bells do we want to create through doing another trial?
I think Kira Bell is actually looking to essentially try and stop this trial, right, or take this to a high court.
Yeah, she and James Esses are legally challenging it and say they'll go all the way to the Supreme Court. And I back them. You know, I intervened in Kira's judicial review against the Tavistock, and in that case, that was 2020, the judge found in that case that children didn't have the capacity to consent to these treatments. And this is the other thing. These children will be 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, under 15 years and 9 months. And children of that age cannot have the capacity to consent to taking something that will affect them throughout the whole of their adult lives and has known serious side effects like infertility, like lack of sexual function. That will affect their adult relationships. They won't be able to live normal lives as men or as women. They'll be in a sort of no man's land. So it's sort of Frankenstein medicine, really, to my mind. And you cannot. This is not a life-saving treatment. You know, I agree that clinical trials need to happen, and sometimes you need to take risks, but that's in life-saving cases like childhood leukemia or cancer or those sorts of things. This is not. But I think this is partly why it's been sold by the trans activists as being life-saving. And I think that is a terrible, you know, that's just emotional manipulation and a really cruel thing to do, because the children hear that message, the parents hear that message. And what you're going to get is a cohort of children and parents who've been totally indoctrinated by the Stonewall gender identity ideology. they are all going to have really positive results in that 2-year period having blockers. Because look what pressure is on those kids. They're carrying this forward for all the poor trans kids that are coming up behind them, and the pressure on the parents who've allowed this treatment for their children. The results are going to be absolutely fantastic. And the main result they're looking for is quality of life. So there are secondary results on how it affects gender dysphoria, etc. But it's overall quality of life. They're all going to say it's fantastic, aren't they?
And then in 10 years' time, we're going to see the real fallout.
You know, it's supposed to be around 8 years that it is the regret before regret sets in. So we need a lifetime study, really.
And this is the NHS, and this is taxpayers' money.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't want to be paying for this.
No. Anyway, well, thank you very much for joining us. Founder of Transgender Trend, Stephanie Davis arrived. I am now joined by the GB News senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, did you see the interview that we've just had?
Yes, I did. And I think most of what Stephanie says is absolutely right. But there were a couple of bits she left out of it. The point of the Hilary Cass review was to look at the Tavistock Clinic, and her conclusion was that what had happened there was too lax. It's because of that that new research is actually needed. And what Hilary Cass also said is that although there are significant risks with puberty blockers, what should happen is that they should be looked at in what she called a research framework. That's exactly what is happening now. And the point really comes down to it's a balance has to be struck here. On one hand, yes, we accept that there is a risk, and certainly the children must be aware of that, and so must the parents.
But if it's an 8-year-old, 9-year-old child, are they really going to understand those risks?
Well, I mean, the parents should understand those risks, but you have to balance that with other risks, which is depression and self-harm, if they don't go ahead.
But there are studies that prove actually that it doesn't do anything to lessen depression. And actually people who then go into the cross hormones afterwards, then they express regret years later that leads to real depression. But one question I'd ask you, Nigel, is why don't you think that they're doing a study using therapy? Because 85% of these children will grow out of it naturally and with the help of therapeutic means. Surely we should exhaust those avenues first before launching into this dangerous medicalisation.
Yeah, and talking therapists will be one of the things that will be going on. The whole point here is to look at it on a case-by-case basis. So we're not talking about generalisations here, we're talking about individuals. And certainly better to take very cautious steps, talking therapy being one of them, puberty blockers another, opposite sex hormones, but better that than leaping straight towards surgery.
Well, I know, but that's the problem is, of course, but you say it's like little steps. The problem is that puberty blockers will inevitably lead to cross-sex hormones, which will lead, it is a pathway, a proven pathway that is incredibly dangerous. But even the puberty blockers in and of themselves have these very serious effects. And of course, when someone like Kira Bell first went on them, she was told there were no negative side effects at all. Now we know that just the puberty blockers in and of themselves lower IQ, decrease bone density, affect sexual function, affect your brain development. I mean, is it really worth the risk to these 200 vulnerable children?
Well, I mean, during the process, that their hearts, brains and bones will be frequently tested to see if there are any adverse effects. The point basically is that Tavistock didn't carry out their clinical trials properly. That was the point of the Cass review. What the point of this is to try and do the research properly. So what Hilary Cass was saying was not ruling out puberty blockers as a road towards becoming a trans person, but saying that it must be done properly under proper medical supervision, and that's what this trial is intended to be.
OK, well, I think a lot of people are pretty shocked, but it's very good to have your opinion. Thank you very much for joining us, Nigel Nelson. A Department of Health and Social Care spokesman said, young people with gender incongruence need access to high-quality, safe and effective care. We are following the CAS review, which was clear that the evidence on care for these children is lacking, and proposed this research to help provide it. Medical care must always be based on solid evidence, and children's safety must come first. Next on Free Speech Nation, CPS sparks outrage by appealing the Quran-burning case, raising free speech fears. See you in 2 minutes.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Jubes & Co. with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
OK, that last section was very important. We ran over a little bit, so we're going to go straight to some audience questions. Adik, go.
Hey, Josh, I have a question for you. Will your party soon to be no party?
Yes, the Your Party, are they going to be no party? Now, this is because Iqbal Mohammed has resigned from Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party days before its inaugural conference, following criticism from co-founder Zara Sultana over his gender-critical social media post. His departure is the second in a week, reducing the party's prospective MPs from 6 to 4. So, what we have here is the left and the green, the red and the greens having arguments here, interestingly, over trans rights. What do you think?
Yeah, this is quite a funny story. Well, yeah, it's hard to make it any funnier. In Italy, we call it the coalition of the devil and the holy water. So, to quote something from Gareth Roberts of Spiked, suddenly Zara Sultana, who is the co-founder of this Your Party, it's not my party, it's not your party either, but Your Party, she has discovered that mullahs and men in dresses are not ideal bedfellows.
I'm shocked.
Would you believe it?
I can hardly believe it.
Did you see this coming?
Well, we've talked about it every week for the past how long? Yeah, of course, it's hysterical, isn't it? It's embarrassing for them, it's very funny for us. And of course we saw it coming. I mean, it's just... And it's so funny listening to somebody who's publicly...
I just want to say thank you to the Gaza MPs for coming on board the gender-critical train. I didn't know there were TERFs. That's the end of Free Speech Nation for the first hour. Don't go away, we've got plenty more to come between now and 9 o'clock. See you in 2 minutes. No.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's a mixed picture out there. We have an area of low pressure moving south and eastward, so rain or showers for some of us, and it's still feeling chilly. So the area of low pressure is across the northwest and it's going to gradually sink its way south and eastwards as we go through this evening and overnight. So any outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland will sink their way into Wales, northern England, eventually towards southwest Wales and southern England, accompanied by a strong, brisk northwesterly wind, so coastal gales possible in the south. Further north, holding on to a lot of cloud, but the wind direction now coming in for a northerly. But for most of us, it's a frost-free start to Monday morning, given a lot of cloud cover and showery outbreaks of rain. So there are going to be some showers focused again across eastern Scotland, where they could be falling as snow over the mountains. Drier towards the west with some sunny spells. Best of the sunshine really across Northern Ireland. Dry here to start Monday morning. But across England and Wales, well, it's a cloudy but chilly start to the morning, with the strongest winds still across the southwest and into the English Channel. So as we go through Monday morning and into the afternoon, most of the showers across the southeast will clear their way through. Best of the sunshine across Northern Ireland, into Scotland and eventually into parts of Wales and the southwest as the cloud breaks. Then the focus for the showers really confined to eastern areas, still falling as snow across eastern Scotland. It's going to be feeling chilly out there. We hold on to more of a northerly wind, but feeling more pleasant across Northern Ireland. That leads to a cold start to Tuesday morning, especially in the west, but we actually have a ridge of higher pressure. So for most on Tuesday, it's largely fine and settled. A few showers still running down the eastern coast. Now, as we go Wednesday into Thursday, it's actually turning milder and more unsettled after a cold start. That's all from me. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can enjoy Christmas on us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB 17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, including Sharon Davies, who's sitting right there, but you can't see it. But first, the news update with Bethany Elsie.
Good evening. Your top stories at 8 o'clock, and we'll start with some breaking news. The US Secretary of State says good progress has been made during peace talks with Ukrainian delegates. Marco Rubio described the meeting in Geneva as the best they've had since coming into office in January. He said tremendous progress has been made and that there are some sticking points, but none of it insurmountable. They just need more time. Delegates from Ukraine, the US and European countries are currently meeting in Geneva to discuss a negotiation plan to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's grateful to the US and President Donald Trump for his efforts in trying to help. Zelensky also thanked Europe, the G7 and the G20 for their support.
This is a very delicate moment, and it's important. Like I said, there's not agreement on those yet. Some of it is semantics or language. Others require higher level decisions and consultation. Others, I think, just need more time to work through. None of it insurmountable. I can tell you that the items that remain open are not insurmountable. We just need more time than what we have today. I honestly believe we'll get there. I'm not going to speculate or go into the details of any of the specific items in the latest version of the proposal because, frankly, by tomorrow or the next day, that may have evolved and changed further. And but I can tell you, I guess, that I feel very optimistic that we can get something done here because we made a tremendous amount of progress today.
A senior Conservative minister says the Chancellor's position has become untenable amid chaotic announcements ahead of the budget next week. Last week, Rachel Reeves scrapped plans to raise income tax, but she's widely expected to raise other taxes in an effort to bridge a multi-billion-pound gap in her spending plans. Writing in the Daily Mirror, she's pledged to grip the cost of living crisis, but Mel Stride told GB News the British public is running out of patience.
I think if we've reached the point where this government in opposition made a lot of very clear commitments, including in their manifesto, then promptly junked a lot of them and did different things in office, and has now arrived at a point where once again we are led to believe they will be putting up taxes on hard-working people, which is something that they've said they wouldn't do, then yeah, I think it's time for her to step aside, I'm afraid.
The Prime Minister has opened the door for Angela Rayner to return to frontline politics. Speaking at the G20 summit in South Africa, Sir Keir Starmer said he absolutely wants his former deputy back at some stage. Rayner left office in September over controversy surrounding her tax affairs after she underpaid stamp duty on one of her homes. Starmer has described her as a big voice in the Labour movement and said they still talk often. A woman who died in Wiltshire has been described by colleagues as an incredible and kind person. 55-year-old Sarah Forrester, who worked for a mental health charity called the Kelly Foundation, was found dead at her home in Swindon on Friday evening. A 13-year-old girl was arrested on suspicion of murder yesterday, but has since been released on bail. You're up to date. Have a very good evening.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Now, Olympic swimmer Sharon Davis insists she has never been anti-trans, but is staunchly pro-female as she launches the Women's Sports Union with yachtswoman Tracy Edwards. The new organisation aims to protect single-sex categories in sport and take legal action against federations failing to ensure fairness for women. Davis, soon to become a Conservative peer, says the Supreme Court ruling on biological sex validates her decade-long campaign for women's rights in athletics. Well, I'm joined now by the former Olympic swimmer, Sharon Davis. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm so excited you're here.
Oh, me too. I know. I've been meaning to come down and see you for so long.
And every time I bump into you, I'm like, please come on the show.
I know.
Yeah.
And you're giving us an opportunity to promote our Women's Sports Union, which is so important because we just want people to join, because we know that they need a voice, and Tracy and I just want to be that voice, because it's really difficult when you're dealing with, young people and parents of young people. They're frightened to say the things that they want to say. But we know that women's sport should be for women. We know that there's a biological difference between male and females. Even the IOC, at long last, have admitted that we can't remove male physical advantage. So what we mustn't do is just protect the elite and throw everybody else under the bus, which is what we're doing at the moment. And you mentioned that, the leaks of the Equality Act and the Supreme Court ruling earlier in this year, and it makes it extremely clear that women's sport should be single sex.
Well, this is it. You would think with the Supreme Court ruling that you would think that this debate would be over.
Yeah.
Yet you have particularly a lot of these grassroots. Was it about 40 teams?
Yeah.
40
well,
sports?
34 sports still here in the UK that do not protect the female category. So a few of them, do that compromise of looking after the elite, but lots of them don't look after the pathways, the recreationals, the juniors. And what happens with women's sport is they just self-exclude. So, if you have, if women are going into a change room to do an all-woman class and there's a man that decides to identify in there, they will just stop going. Or if we have, young girls that are competing against young boys, they stop going. Or dads pull them out because they're worried they're going to get injured.
Lots of kids have been injured.
Yeah, lots of kids have been very seriously injured. One of the most heartbreaking stories that I've actually had was a mum came home, her 11-year-old came home from school this summer and said that the headmaster decided to be inclusive. Sport is already inclusive, right? Everybody gets to play it. You just play it where you fit the right category. He was going to run co-ed sports day, so they did mixed sports all day and not a single little girl won a race. And so this little 11-year-old came home and said, Mum, what's the point of me bothering? And that's what we're telling our young girls at the moment. What is the point in me bothering? And that is not right, because girls get 5% of the sponsorship dollar in the world of sport. That's all we get. There's 20 stories in sport for men versus one story for women. And we're 51% of the population. So we get this little tiny piece of the cake, and then we were told we couldn't even have fair sport anymore.
Well, that's it. So, you've been involved in this debate a long time, really. What was it the first... it seems so self-evident, and the thing about sports is it seems to be an easy issue for people to grapple with, easier maybe than toilets, and people can just... It's very self-evident that men are physically different to women, and that's why we have the different categories of sports.
Exactly.
So what was it for you that first got you involved within this very, as people say, toxic debate?
Yeah, it's genuinely less toxic than people think when you actually can get people to speak, without a camera being on them. It's people are just frightened. They are extremely intimidated, and for a very long time, the law was being misrepresented to the sporting governing bodies, and so they were going down the route of least resistance and just throwing women under the PC bus. I spoke out because I was involved with the East German era. So all these young East German girls were being given testosterone from the age of 11. They dominated world sport for nearly 20 years. The IOC did nothing about it. Everybody knew what was going on. Everybody knew that they were being given something. Track and field, rowing and swimming were the three sports they really concentrated on. In my Olympic Games, they won 6 1-2-3s and no men's medals, right, whatsoever. It was obvious what was going on. Many of those girls have died. All of them are ill. And a whole generation, in fact, 2 generations, really lost out on all the medals that they should have won. I had friends that were 4th behind 3 East Germans, and nobody knows who they are. And their whole lives would have been different. So I thought, I just can't watch this happen again. It's a slightly different route, but it's exactly the same result. Girls that should be winning were being beaten by people that are full of testosterone. That is not fair. And I thought, I just can't. Surely the science and the peer-reviewed science, the evidence will stack up. It took us 5 years before we were even able to debate, and get that information out. And so the IOC in 2015 decided to take the position that there was no... the starting position, there was no biological advantage to being male. And you go... But every result ever in history has shown you that there is. That's the most ridiculous position to ever start from whatsoever. And now here we are 10 years later and they've rowed back. But it's taken 10 years for them
10 years
do
to
that.
get sanity.
Yeah.
And one of those reactions, and I didn't know this as I was reading an interview with you today, was the reaction, because you used to work for decades for the BBC, and when you came out and you had this sort of horrific response by the head of sport.
Yeah, I mean, that was a new post, a new employment only a little while ago, I think 18 months or so ago. I mean, it was just an article that he'd written for The Times in 2019, before he was working for the BBC, actually. And it was just really ridiculous. He actually accused me of being a racist by saying that men in women's sport was the same as saying a black woman in women's sport. Well, I've got mixed-race kids, right? So I've got a daughter just track and field who's black. You know, it's such an insulting position to actually take, because no one is saying that any woman of any colour shouldn't be in sport. What we're saying is biological males shouldn't be in women's sport, and there's a very, very big difference. If you take track and field, I mean, again, you know, we have a big problem in sport with DSD athletes. Now, these DSD athletes are biologically male.
We had the boxing this year.
Yeah, so we saw Paris last year, which was, you know, a biological male was put in the boxing ring against a female. A male will hit 160% harder than a female onto a less dense bone structure. So for 10 years, we've been waiting for a woman to be paralysed or killed. And it's almost that's what we've been waiting for. And we nearly had it last summer. And I think a lot of people woke up watching that and realised that we just can't carry on doing this. You know, bring sex screening in, protect the female category, and create an open category if need be. Because I genuinely believe everybody should do sport, Josh. I mean, I've spent my whole life trying to encourage people to do sport. I don't want anyone to be excluded. I just believe that women are worthy of their own category. And, you know, no one would say it's OK for a 15-year-old to go, I identify as 12, and I'm going to go off and play with the 12-year-olds because that's what I feel like. But that's what we've allowed to happen.
It's crazy. And as you say, when this argument is framed, it's always that the banning of trans people from sport. No, it's just be in the appropriate category.
Be in the category that fits the reality of the body that you have. You know, and that's why I think an open category works, because you could call yourself whatever you like, wear whatever you like. I mean, what's frustrating, again, is that women's sport was always had no problem with trans-identifying men, so females that identify as male. So we even had a Filipino boxer in Paris, you know, who identified as being male, but still opted to compete with the women, providing they're on testosterone. Nobody cares. So if the women can do it, why can't the men?
Well, that's it. Well, now the Olympic Committee have essentially said that it will now test for sex, and that is what is how it's sex. But I went to see you at a talk recently, and I was surprised by the prevalence still within the grassroots movement. And I really thought this was over, and it's not. So what is your newly founded organisation going to be able to do to get them to comply? Organisations
like gymnastics still have self-ID. So, you know, I mean, there's no protection there whatsoever. We have a CEO of Rounders, a bat-hitting sport who doesn't think it's a sex-affected sport. I mean, really shouldn't be in their jobs if they don't understand sport at all in that way. I think what we're going to do is go after these individual CEOs because they've been shirking their responsibilities, so we will put them very much on the spot. And also, the English FA, they decided to actually protect the female category after the Supreme Court ruling because their insurance was null and void. So public liability insurance becomes null and void if you break the law. And by allowing males into female sport at the moment, you're breaking the law. So we're going to try nicely to point all these things out because we don't want to do lawsuits. But if we have to go down that route, then that's what we'll do. Because I guess a lot of these organisations are saying, oh, we're just waiting for the guidance to come out, which is such a cowardly route to it. Some sports have been 2 years revising their policy. They're not revising their policy. They're doing absolutely nothing. So, you know, we're going to stop them just sitting on their hands and doing nothing and pretend it doesn't matter. It really does matter. And it matters at every level. It's really important. We cannot say this woman is worthy over here because she's good enough. But all these women over here are not good enough, so they're not worthy. And that is sex discrimination. And those leaked documentation, you know, we saw in the Times last week, actually says that it is sex discrimination. So that's what we'll be going for. To explain to someone who doesn't necessarily, who might have just kind of gone down the route that it is about elite sport and it is about medals, can we just provide an argument to them that says actually all sport is important? Yeah, well, why should anybody why should any woman be less important? I don't really understand. If you want to do it as a pathway or as a junior or as a recreational, why are you less important? You know, you're still entitled to your fair sport. I know in tennis and in golf in particular, for club matches, a lot of women have been put up against men in club competitions and they just walk away. They just don't want to do it. You know, why should they? Absolutely. And you saw the same even in a sport like pool, where you see that actually
physical strength does have a huge impact on outcome.
It does. Height, you know, and size of hands and break speed, you know, and all sorts of different things. And the good thing is we went to court and we won that. So if we can show in court that pool is sex-affected, then you can be damn sure that rounders is sex-affected. So, you know, we will be going after all the obvious situations. But it's really important that people come and join us. You know, membership is obviously there. We'd love lots of members. But if you want to be anonymous and make donations so we can fight on your behalf, then please do.
Do you believe that if your organisation had existed 10, 15 years ago, that we would be in this situation that we went through?
I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. I mean, we are in this crazy place because people stopped being sensible. You know, that I just want people to have common sense again, because it used to be common and it's not anymore. And you know, that's what we desperately need. But what was heartbreaking for me was that all these decisions were made against all the peer-reviewed studies. And it's taken us 10 years for them to pay attention to what was always there, apart from the obvious, which is why we had men and women's competitions in the first place.
Yeah. Do you think there is also a sort of a silver lining here, that there is the birth of an organisation like this finally that can, once this issue is resolved, that will be there to deal with other issues for women in sport?
And that's such a good question, because really what we wanted to do, what Tracy and I wanted to do, and it's fabulous that I'm working with Tracy, I've got so much respect for her. And in fact, I was in Auckland when Maiden came in all those years ago, so we've got lovely history together, is to create something that gives women a voice. So in 1998, the IOC asked all their elite female athletes, they polled them to say, do you want sex screening to carry on? And 82% said yes, and they stopped it. So you kind of go, why did you bother to ask your female, athletes if you're not going to pay any attention to them? And so we need something that gives female athletes an actual voice. And if we can then maybe just ship this off and have one in China, one in Canada, one in Australia, one in America, and they can be all over the place so that women actually get a voice in women's sport, then that would be a really good thing. I want to grow women's sport. I want to get better exposure, get more money in there, but more importantly, I just want kids doing it. We used to lose girls from sport at 14, 15. We're now losing them at 11.
Wow, OK, well...
And we both want so desperately for that not to be the case.
Sure. Well, my daughter's 9, so got 2 years left.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Ladies
you.
and gentlemen, big round of applause, Sharon Davies. Next, on Free Speech Nation, CPS sparks outrage by appealing the Quran burning case, raising free speech fears. You do not want to miss this. See you in 2 minutes.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Controversy surrounds the Crown Prosecution Service after it announced an appeal in the Quran burning case of Hamid Koskan. The CPS describes the act as highly provocative and warns it could influence future public order cases. I am now joined by the former prisoner and justice journalist, David Shipley. David, welcome to the show. David, it feels like, for me, that I'm covering this case a lot. And also this idea of sort of Islamophobia, because it's just so important. Now, the CPS, this is a sort of baffling decision, and quite a scary decision. I don't want to get alarmist, but would you agree with that?
No, I think it is. I think it's... The reason we're covering it a lot is because the CPS won't let this drop. So you go back to the spring, Hamid Koskan did a protest outside the Turkish consulate. He burned a Quran. As a result of doing that process, he was attacked by someone who went and got a knife. Two people? Well, two people, actually. One man who went and got a knife, Musa Kadri, and slashed at Hamid, and another delivery driver who we've never been able to identify, who just rode off. Since then, Hamid has been convicted of a public order offence initially, and to begin with, the CPS tried to prosecute him on the basis of offending the religious institution of Islam. Which is a nonsense. That isn't a term which exists in English law.
It's not a person.
No, exactly. Under English public order law, you can only harm a person. So they completely tried to invent a law. Then when that was called out by the press, they backed off and they said, oh, actually, no, we're going to do it for this racially aggravated public order offence. They got a guilty conviction. Hamid then won his appeal, which was funded by the Free Speech Union and the National Secular Society. And we all thought, thank goodness, we've won this little battle for free speech, and actually you are allowed to.
We're not advocating people, by the way, going out and burning the Quran. It's just the point is that in this country, in a liberal democracy, you have the right to do so.
It shouldn't be a crime. No. But, and I think that's, and Hamid clearly feels very strongly about this. He has, experience as a man who left an Islamic country to come here. He has very strong feelings about Islam, and he should be allowed to express those in a free country. Now, this Friday afternoon, we discovered this. The CPS slipped this out, saying, actually, we're going to appeal this. And it's a very well-written appeal. It doesn't feel like it's been written by a normal CPS solicitor. I believe it may well have been outsourced to a professional specialist barrister, because they've clearly taken some time drafting this. And there's some really disturbing stuff in there. They say essentially that burning a Quran is an act of desecration. This is the actual word they use. He is desecrating this important symbol of Islam.
So let's just stick with that, because that, for me, that also is what absolutely stuck out. That's essentially laying their case out right there. It's a book. It's a desecration for Muslims, absolutely, but it's not a desecration for anybody who doesn't believe that Muhammad was the prophet and is not a Muslim. It's just it's a book.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
to state that, it would suggest that the CPS are Muslims or writing from that position.
I believe so. I think they are tacitly accepting the idea of Islamic blasphemy codes. But it gets worse. They actually also say that one of the reasons you can tell it's bad to burn a Quran is often when the Quran is burned around the world, Muslims riot and are violent and are very upset. So what we're saying is, if there is violence in response to the burning of the Quran, that's a proof that burning a Quran is wrong. That's the argument the CPS...
And that was the argument they made during the initial case, right?
It was, yes. They said that actually the fact that Musa Kadri came along and attacked Hamid with a knife proved how provocative this act was. So this is complete victim blaming. It's saying that actually if people are crazy and deranged enough to respond to damage to a physical object with acts of murderous violence, that's proof that you shouldn't damage the object. It is absolutely trying to instantiate an Islamic blasphemy code.
But this idea of being obviously provocative, what's so dangerous, of course, is that then could be applied to any other ideology. We've talked this evening about gender ideology. If you had someone who believed in trans ideology to the point where they would get offended to be inciting violence or to actually carry out violence, then arguably that proves that the person who said, that trans women are men or something deserved it.
Exactly, and it creates an opportunity for anyone who is an extremist and willing to use violence to shut down speech by using violence. And they will know that actually the CPS take the view that they will say, well, that proves the speech shouldn't have happened. And I think what's particularly concerning about this as well is the CPS are being very secretive about this. So when they began by trying to charge Hamid for the offence of offending the religious institution of Islam, I put an FOI request, a Freedom of Information request, to say, how many times have you used that charge? Because I suspect that wasn't the first time. And they've been batting that away all year, saying, oh, it'd be too expensive for us to check, there's too many records to look through. I think if I was running the CPS and I discovered one of my lawyers had put together a charge which was completely unlawful, essentially trying to create an entirely new law, and I think most reasonable people, would order an inquiry and say, how many times have we used that? And that should exist in document. They haven't apparently done that, according to their FOI responses, which says to me it happens all the time and they're OK with it. And that's terrifying. And they are very clearly trying to bring in, by the back door, Islamic blasphemy codes. And they'll keep saying there's no blasphemy law, but, at the same time they're saying, well, if you do something that desecrates a Muslim holy book and might cause violence by Muslims, well, that's a crime. Effectively, what they are creating is an Islamic blasphemy law, and we have to fight this because it is absolutely sinister.
So they could argue, of course, their job is to, I guess, the wider role here is to maintain social cohesion. And so it could be that there's someone who thinks, well, this is going to cause violence, so we kind of want to stamp it out because we don't want people getting hurt, or for their own good if they're going to be attacked. I'm being generous here. I'm trying to sort of, rather than thinking that the entire CPS is a captured organisation, do you think that there might be some truth to that, or do you think that this is possibly even activists? I don't want to get too cranky and conspiracy theory-ish, but do you think that there could be just activists acting within the CPS who are using this to push through their ideology?
Well, I've submitted another FOI request asking to see the discussions which took place around why they chose to appeal Hamid's successful appeal, because they would almost never bother to appeal this sort of stuff. And again, they actually explain why in the document. They say, well, if we don't appeal this, we might not be able to prosecute people in the future for offending Muslims. So there's a very clear intent there. I think we need to know who within the CPS has made these decisions. How high has it gone? Which individuals are responsible? And they're very secretive as an organisation. They won't share that information, but we have to know that.
And we pay their wages, of course.
We do, ultimately. They ultimately are a branch of the civil service, and they should be accountable. But it's one of these many areas of the state where we have these very unaccountable, almost anonymous civil servants making really serious decisions. So we need to understand why a decision will be made. I'm sure there will be some people, or many people within the CPS, who've convinced themselves they're doing the right thing. But exactly as we saw with the Muslim rape gangs, we saw the situation where these people would convince themselves they were sustaining social cohesion while doing great evil. It doesn't matter why people think they're doing something. It doesn't matter if they say, I'm doing this for a good reason. Actually, if they're doing harm, it's bad and we should oppose it. And trying to create an Islamic blasphemy code, trying to make it illegal to do anything which might desecrate religious symbols of Muslims, is fundamentally a bad thing, and we have to stop it, whether or not people think they're doing it for the right reasons.
Have you seen any evidence of this same terminology, act of desecration, being used for the Bible or for the Torah, or is it just seem to be used when it comes to the Quran? I'm
not aware of it being used in any other case, but also I'm not aware that anyone has ever been prosecuted for burning a Bible or a Torah. And I think in reality, that's because Christians and Jews wouldn't respond to such acts with murderous violence. And if we're going to create a law where...
Probably be like, no, watch out, don't get burnt. Watch out for yourself.
Yeah, but because we just wouldn't, right? So it seems I I think what's going on there is that and we've seen this for decades since Salman Rushdie, right? The fear of murderous violence by some Muslims in response to what they see as offences to their religion actually has turned us into cowards who are suppressing free speech.
Well, because it's emboldened them, frankly, and that's why exactly we are in the situation. And final question is, because they seem to be also saying within this that it's where it happened, like the context, the fact it happened in front of the Turkish embassy, the implication being that you can burn they're like, oh, you can burn the Quran, you just got to do it at home.
Yeah, I think specifically...
And that's not a fun Friday night.
No, I wouldn't recommend it to them, but I think what they seem to be arguing is that the fact that Muslims might have come past and seen it was the problem, you know. So yes, you could do it privately at home where you'd be certain no Muslims would see it. Yeah. Which is no real defence of free speech, is it?
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us. I'm just going to read this out because we have approached the CPS for a comment. We're waiting for a response. However, this is what they said to The Times. There is no law to prosecute people for blasphemy, and burning a religious text on its own is not a criminal act. Our case remains that Hamid Koskan's words, choice of location and burning of the Quran amounted to disorderly behaviour, and at the time he demonstrated hostility towards a religious or racial group, which is a crime. We have appealed the decision and the judge has agreed to state a case for the High Court to consider. Anyway, big round of applause, please, for David Shipley. Thank you very much for coming here. Next on Free Speech Nation, Israeli football fans were banned from a Europa League clash with Aston Villa, but now the Dutch authorities, who flagged them as high risk, are contradicting the evidence. Did West Midlands police get it wrong, or is the full story still being hidden? See you in 2 minutes. Thank you.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
The unsettled weather continues across the central Mediterranean. Heavy rain and thunderstorms expected here. Some areas could even see a month's worth of rainfall in just a few days. Mostly dry and settled across Madeira, but many areas of northern Europe are going to see a very unsettled day on Monday. The poorest of conditions likely across Italy and around the Adriatic coastline. Some heavy showers and thunderstorms here. Still a mix of sunshine and showers into next week, with the best of the temperatures across Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's a mixed picture out there. We have an area of low pressure moving south and eastward, so rain or showers for some of us, and it's still feeling chilly. So the area of low pressure is across the northwest, and it's going to gradually sink its way south and eastwards as we go through this evening and overnight. So any outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland will sink their way into Wales, northern England, eventually towards southwest Wales and southern England, accompanied by a strong, brisk northwesterly wind, so coastal gales possible in the south. Further north, holding on to a lot of cloud, but the wind direction now coming in for a northerly. But for most of us, it's a frost-free start to Monday morning, given a lot of cloud cover and showery outbreaks of rain. So there are going to be some showers focused again across eastern Scotland, where they could be falling as snow over the mountains. Drier towards the west with some sunny spells. Best of the sunshine really across Northern Ireland. Dry here to start Monday morning. But across England and Wales, well, it's a cloudy but chilly start to the morning, with the strongest winds still across the southwest and into the English Channel. So as we go through Monday morning and into the afternoon, most of the showers across the southeast will clear their way through. Best of the sunshine across Northern Ireland, into Scotland and eventually into parts of Wales and the southwest as the cloud breaks. Then the focus for the showers really confined to eastern areas, still falling as snow across eastern Scotland. It's going to be feeling chilly out there. We hold on to more of a northerly wind, but feeling more pleasant across Northern Ireland. That leads to a cold start to Tuesday morning, especially in the west, but we actually have a ridge of higher pressure. So for most on Tuesday, it's largely fine and settled. A few showers still running down the eastern coast. Now, as we go Wednesday into Thursday, it's actually turning milder and more unsettled after a cold start. That's all from me. Bye-bye.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Now, remember the unedifying spectacle of Israeli football fans being banned from attending Europa League clash with Aston Villa? It turns out that the evidence given to West Midlands Police by the Dutch authorities that led to the fans being banned has been contradicted by the Dutch authorities. So, after clashes on the streets of Amsterdam following a clash with Ajax in late 2024, that's what I've learned now, how to pronounce it, visiting the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans were classed as high risk, but now both the chief prosecutor and police chief in Amsterdam have challenged the findings, stating the Israeli team did not have a violent reputation. So, will we ever find out the truth from the West Midlands Police on whose advice this special example was made of the Israeli team? I am now joined by the political correspondent for the Jewish Chronicle, Lauren Bell-Cross. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
This has been going on for about a month or so, 6 weeks. But this week, you uncovered the real information that was compiled by the Dutch authorities. Is that right?
Yes. So I uncovered the Dutch authorities. What they do is after any incident, they produce something that's known as a statement of facts, which is objective what exactly happened in Amsterdam with the Maccabi fans and with the locals. So whereas we were being told by West Midlands Police that the exclusive reason, the main reason that Maccabi fans were banned was because of these extreme hooliganism and very worrying, very concerning, very high-risk hooliganist elements within Maccabi Tel Aviv. Actually, what the Dutch report says, that in advance of the fixture, these fans were not considered high risk at all. One thing they said, that, you know, the fanaticism of some fans was because they like lighting flares. And that's not to say that the events in Amsterdam went completely without incident, but what was quite odd is a lot of the information seemed to be quite bizarre, because after the incidents in Amsterdam, the then Dutch Prime Minister cut home a trip of European leaders to go and address the crisis that's happening in his country. The Dutch king apologised to the President of Israel, saying, our country failed Jews in World War II, and we've done so again. So if it was the case that such senior Dutch politicians were apologising for the behaviour, for what went on in Amsterdam, why is it being painted by several politicians and also the police that it was exclusively a problem with the Israelis? Now, the statement of facts continued. It said that actually there were 59 arrests, 10 were Israeli, the remainder were Dutch. And some of the detail that was then put out in documents attributed to West Midlands Police said that there was an army of 600 or so Israeli hardcore fans that went out and committed unspeakable racist attacks. There was a mob of about 50 people, of about 1,000 fans, who did some vandalism. They tore down a flag. And actually, one particularly egregious example that was cited in a document linked to West Midlands Police that other publications have cited, saying that the Israeli fans chased a local and made him go in the canal. Actually, it was the reverse that happened there. It was an Israeli fan who was forced to say, oh, say free Palestine or we'll let you out, as well as countless other examples of what was called a Jew hunt by locals. It was a coordinated attack, as this document says, in black and white, saying they were people looking for confrontation with Maccabi fans.
in the week before any Israeli fans had even turned up. So to try and blame it on the behaviour of these 50 fans or so, that's when you've got... And by the way, it should be said, it's not even about football. Like the Ajax fans and the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans, I believe they actually get on very well. This was local Arabs, taxi drivers, people who work in hotels, organising on WhatsApp, as you say, a Jew hunt in the days and weeks.
And I think the question for several GB News viewers and listeners might be wondering, like, well, why should we care about what happens in Amsterdam? Why is this of any relevance to us? The relevance is, are the police telling people in this country the truth? And I think GB News in particular has campaigned very strongly on two-tier policing, two-tier justice. If the police force, the police force in the second largest city in the United Kingdom cannot clearly and honestly state, this is why we took a decision. Why is it the decision that the Prime Minister has condemned, that the Home Secretary condemned, that the Culture Secretary condemned, why is this a decision that was taken by a small committee of 85 or so people, 2 of the 4 political people on which have kind of both got very kind of profoundly anti-Israel views? So have they made that decision purely on safety grounds when there have been other football teams with quite bad hooliganism problems? So Legia Warsaw, and I think they're playing a team from Switzerland. Again, quite bad hooliganism problems. They're allowed to come. So why is it that only the Israeli team has been made an example of? Is it because they cannot protect the streets that they are meant to do? Is that an issue? Or if not, why are we not being told the truth? If it is this hooliganism problem, can we have all the evidence that the Dutch authorities provided you with? And if not, why not?
Because there is also this, what I've seen a report that was in the Daily Mail, that some of this information came from someone who was formerly a member of Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organisation. So we don't know if these two things, if West Midlands Police are getting their intelligence sources from somebody with such nefarious connections, and of course the idea that they're listening to it, acting upon it, and then possibly it seems like lying in terms of when they're coming to the public, and I believe they met up with the Jewish local community. There's only about 2,000 Jews in Birmingham, and supposedly he said, this is why we've made this decision, because it's based on the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans' behaviour, when all of that is actually not true. And so let's talk about why they possibly have gone down this route. I'm going to say, I think it's because they were afraid that there was going to be a public safety concern, which was going to be the Jewish fans being attacked by local Islamists. That seems to be what it is. And if that is the case, then what we have is a police force giving in to local Muslim populations, Islamist populations, and choosing that over the rights of British Jewish fans who would have gone along to see. Now, that is terrifying, surely, for anyone of any ethnicity in this country, including moderate Muslims, by the way.
Yeah. And look, I think for a lot of people, that will be their perception of events. Their perception will be that actually West Midlands Police are too scared to deal with a confrontation in the street. And I think this is why a cross-party coalition of MPs and members of the House of Lords are saying to West Midlands Police, you need to release whatever correspondence you have had with the Dutch authorities, and including Steve McCabe, who is now Lord McCabe, the former MP for Birmingham Selly Oak and former Birmingham councillor, someone who has spent the best part of 30 years representing the city of Birmingham. He has now come out and said, if West Midlands Police can't deal with this in an adequate manner, there needs to be a proper independent inquiry into what on earth has gone on. And I think that is the basic issue here, is a question of truth. Can we trust our police force to tell the truth about what is happening and why they are making the decisions they are making? And if they are found to have made decisions with input from questionable groups or with questionable data, then that is a very, very serious matter indeed.
Absolutely. Well, look, it sounds like this case isn't going to go anywhere, and we have to get to the bottom of it, really, for the country, I would argue. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for Lauren L. Cross. A spokesperson for West Midlands Police said West Midlands Police's evaluation, which based primarily on information and intelligence and had public safety at its heart, we assessed the fixture between Ajax and Maccabi Tel Aviv in Amsterdam as having involved significant public disorder. We met with Dutch police on the 1st of October, where information relating to that 2024 fixture was shared with us. Informed by information and intelligence, we concluded the Maccabi Tel Aviv supporters, specifically the subgroup known as the Maccabi Fanatics, yo, what's up, guys, posed a credible threat to public safety. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. I joke, I hate football. We are satisfied that the policing strategy and operational plan was effective, proportionate and maintained the city's reputation as a safe and welcoming place for everyone. Whew. Next on Free Speech Nation, a pastor's Bible verse lands him in legal trouble. John 3:16, love, faith and eternal life, but police say it could be hate speech. What is happening to free speech in our country? We're going to discuss this in 2 minutes. See you then.
Britain's economy is at a crossroads.
And this budget day, every decision counts.
Taxes and rent to the cost of living.
Whatever the outcome, the GB News family will be there.
With expert analysis breaking down what it means for you.
Budget day, all day Wednesday.
Only here on the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Just went for an insurance check. You know, in our business, you have to have a check before you do any new program, so you don't drop down dead on the program. And it was all very relaxed, as always, chatting with the doctor and all that. And then he phoned me up the next day and said, well, it's slightly worrying. Your PSA is a bit high. I said, what does that mean? And he said, well, it measures the levels of the potential antigens for prostate cancer that you've got. He said, you'll have to go to a specialist. I went to the specialist and he said, yes, you have got very early stages of the indications of prostate cancer. And of course, it felt like my life had collapsed immediately. You know, I was writing the will, I was doing everything. Well, the reality is he was quite cheery about it. He said, look, you're likely to die with this. You're not going to die of it, provided that we keep an eye on it all the time, make sure it doesn't flare up. And so ever since then, this, what I thought was going to be this terrible thing 12 years ago, all it means is that every 4 or 6 months, I have to get a check. That's all. But the good news is, and I've been listening to you for the last 20 minutes thinking, oh my God, what a terrible world we're living in. Everything's wrong. I have a great Christmas message for you. Hold on to your seats. If you want to have a check for prostate cancer, you no longer have to have a finger up your bum. Yes! Isn't that the best thing you've heard all day?
Well, that is, but it's funny that we laugh about it, and so we should really, but that is the big obstacle, isn't it? It's the one thing that puts people off.
Yeah, well, it's gone. It's floated away. Those fingers have floated up to the heavens. All you need to do now is have one of those tiny little blood tests, you know, pinprick in your arm, and they go away and check it and make sure you're all right.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that everyone who believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. It is this Bible verse, John 3:16, that has landed a pastor in hot water with the law. Pastor Mick Fleming, a former gangland enforcer, I didn't realise that. No, I'm joking, I didn't know that. Now works with the homeless and destitute through his charity Church on the Street. But it is the Bible passage he put on the back of his camper van that has brought him into the headlines when he was approached by a police officer who said that verse could be considered hate speech. I'm now joined by the pastor Mick Fleming. Welcome to the show.
Brilliant. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
absolute pleasure. Look, so what happened? I've seen a picture of it. You've got this, you've got it posted on the back of your van. You've got this scripture. I can't see the offensiveness. But let's talk. So just a policeman came up to you and said...
Yeah, he just tapped me on the shoulder whilst we were filling up with petrol. And he said, you know, he were a nice guy. It was like he were giving me the heads up. And it was like, if somebody complained...
So we're seeing it here. We're seeing it here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So he's we're giving me the heads up so that if anybody complained, he said someone would have to come and speak to you because it could be deemed as hate speech. So I didn't sort of complain. I haven't put a complaint in. I haven't done anything. But I just asked the question on social media. What do people think? You know, do you think that's ridiculous? Do you think it is? What do you think? I think the big thing for me was, like, why would you come and tell me that? Why would you ask that question? Why would a policeman come and ask that? And I think, so he says only begotten son, so I don't know if that's a religious connotation, because I'm a Christian and I believe Jesus is the Son of God. So the only way I can think it might offend is if somebody is an atheist or someone's from another religion and they don't believe that. But the first line is God so loved. And I just thought, I don't know what you think, Josh. I find it quite bizarre. And, you know, we kind of like, where I'm from, it's like there isn't free speech. So my accent, northern working class, doesn't give you free speech. You know, that's fact. You know, kind of where I'm from, nobody listens to when I'm feeding children who haven't eaten for 2 days. Nobody listens. The suicide rates that are going through the roof of my friends, the drug-related deaths that are going through the roof, nobody listens. So free speech is really good if someone's going to listen.
Well, with this quote, look, there are passages in the Bible, in the Torah, in the Quran, that arguably are very offensive.
Yes,
certainly when taken out of context or whatever. But this particular quote, I don't see how there could be any perception of offence here. So then it does lead us to the fact that it could only be that it's just because it's a Christian teaching, like saying like you're going to get someone saying it's hate speech for saying Merry Christmas or something.
Yeah, it's a really strange one, isn't it? It's hard to kind of weigh up, but I've had the police contact me directly and wanting to sort of get to the bottom of it. But the bonus is I'm a Christian minister, and that scripture on the back of the policeman tapping me on the shoulder has gone right around the world. So it's like through America, Australia. That's my job, isn't it? So I've done my job. I don't need to do the police's job for them. It's not my job. But I also had a message from Prevent, and this is where now they just said they would love to speak to me. What it's about, I don't know. They've never wanted to talk to me before, and I'm kind of like I'm led by my faith. I don't live in fear. But I kind of like, it's blown my mind. It's absolutely blown my mind.
But you had, I mean, when police went into someone's home, and I remember they're looking and there was a comment that, oh, look, they've got a Douglas Murray book. So they must be extremists. So this idea that just to preach Christianity is somehow hate speech or extremism or people get offended. Do you think this fits into a wider thing? Because we have had Christian preachers on before who are finding themselves coming into contact with the police for preaching in public and being shut down. Do you think there seems to be an intolerance, a growing intolerance in this country towards preaching Christianity?
It's worse than that. So we work with Drug and Alcohol Services, we work with all the agencies, the NHS, everything. And we no longer, because we're faith-based, over the last couple of years, get to sit around them tables to get funding. We're not allowed to. We're kind of kept, we're ostracised.
Well, as a Christian organisation,
As a Christian organisation, without a doubt, as a faith-based organisation, I would say, not particularly Christian. And I think that's the way society's going, or that's the way this government's going.
But faith, of course, is a route to healing for many people, whichever faith it is, of course.
It certainly is. I mean, we see huge transformations every day, you know, kind of in the work that we do. And that is directly from faith.
Yeah, I'm assuming, I already know the answer to this, but I'm assuming this hasn't going to set you off or it's going to put you off really. I imagine you're still going out in your camper van proudly.
Yeah. It's like it's not a fight. It's not a battle. You know, it's kind of more of a dance, and it's kind of like where I found, you know, kind of I'm doing the twist, and they're doing the okey-cokey, and what happens is people who are doing the twist end up getting hit when you're doing the okey-cokey, and they do the okey-cokey back. And you're kind of getting battered, aren't you?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't understand that analogy. But as you are a former gangster, I'm going to let you have it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please, Pastor Mick Fleming. And thank you for joining us for Free Speech Nation. And thank you to my panel. Thank you to all of my brilliant guests this evening. And if you want to join us live in the studio, be part of our wonderful audience, who are wonderful clappers, of course, please go to gbnews.com/tickets. Stay tuned for the brilliant Alex Armstrong tonight. That is next. And thank you very much for watching Free Speech Nation. Goodbye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's a mixed picture out there. We have an area of low pressure moving south and eastward, so rain or showers for some of us, and it's still feeling chilly. So the area of low pressure is across the northwest, and it's going to gradually sink its way south and eastwards as we go through this evening and overnight. So any outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland will sink their way into Wales, northern England, eventually towards southwest Wales and southern England, accompanied by a strong, brisk northwesterly wind, so coastal gales possible in the south. Further north, holding on to a lot of cloud, but the wind direction now coming in for a northerly. But for most of us, it's a frost-free start to Monday morning, given a lot of cloud cover and showery outbreaks of rain. So there are going to be some showers focused again across eastern Scotland, where they could be falling as snow over the mountains. Drier towards the west with some sunny spells. Best of the sunshine really across Northern Ireland. Dry here to start Monday morning. But across England and Wales, well, it's a cloudy but chilly start to the morning, with the strongest winds still across the southwest and into the English Channel. So as we go through Monday morning and into the afternoon, most of the showers across the southeast will clear their way through. Best of the sunshine across Northern Ireland, into Scotland and eventually into parts of Wales and the southwest as the cloud breaks. Then the focus for the showers really confined to eastern areas, still falling as snow across eastern Scotland. It's going to be feeling chilly out there. We hold on to more of a northerly wind, but feeling more pleasant across Northern Ireland. That leads to a cold start to Tuesday morning, especially in the west, but we actually have a ridge of higher pressure, so for most on Tuesday it's largely fine and settled. A few showers still running down the eastern coast. Now as we go Wednesday into Thursday, it's actually turning milder and more unsettled after a cold start. That's all from me. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can enjoy Christmas on us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold